Welcome, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Billy.
Do you guys look? You don't look at that.
Extremely worried about you.
That's a good sign. You both are musicians. You both are in different paths or like different evolutions of that for yourself. But I also think it's really interesting because I know you outside of your music, who you kind of are, or I'm getting to know more of. So I think there's so much that we can talk about. Being an artist, being someone who's like kind of expressing themselves through music, but then also, trying to navigate reality right now. So like to first start off, like let's learn more about yourselves, like share anything that that we can kind of get a little grasp of who you are and what you do.
So yeah, my name is Austin. I've been a musician pretty much my whole life, and I've been making electronic music since I was about 13. I'm 31 now, so more than half my life. My name's Adam. I've just recently launched my music project called Kosmonic.
Supernatural eyes, a pure wanderlust. So beautiful, but yet so dangerous. She's on her way, just right after dusk.
Like initially, the whole reason I got into like making music was really just as an escape, and there wasn't really any motive besides having fun and kind of just feeling exhilarated by creating something that I could envision that would excite me, and that didn't exist yet. You know what I mean? And that's kind of been my motive for doing creative endeavors, is like, that would be really cool if this was more real than just in my head.
It's been a project that I've had in the works for the past 5-6 years, and I'm just now releasing music. Just released it yesterday, first single, Afterlife.
But in the afterlife, I saw light, then I went right through. There was an afterglow beyond the soul. It's only universal truth.
I've been doing music since I was really little. Was a big into dance, and then I really started getting into songwriting when I was in middle school. And then I kind of gave it up after some interesting experiences that kind of woke me up, and I had to really shift my identity and who I am and what I want to write about and focus on with my life. And it took some time. It took a really long time. But yeah, I'm excited to share and talk about any of those experiences today.
I just followed that feeling, and it kind of slowly over time became a career, despite odds, despite a lot of people saying that like it's a pipe dream or it's not realistic or practical.
Totally.
But I don't know. I stuck with it, and now it's what I'm doing full time, and it's a blessing.
Mm. Would you always say it's been a passion of yours since you were little, or is it something that just recurred?
Music
recently?
always has been, I think, a passion since I was little. There was a bit in the middle where I mean, my second passion, I would say, is science and just understanding how reality and understanding how things work, technology, and for a while I thought science was going to kind of be my thing, just because it's more practical in the world and career wise and whatnot. And so there was a time where music wasn't fully, like, it wasn't my one thing. It wasn't my main thing. But when it came around to it, like as I got older, and I realized that there was this merging between the two, which was, the engineering side of science with the musical side of music, and electronic music production kind of was the marriage of those two things. And now I feel like those two worlds, those two sides of me have merged in what I'm doing now. And I don't feel like I've abandoned any part of myself because I had to choose one or the other. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
The only music experience I have was when I was in a band after post-college, in a rock band inspired by Tool with the chick singer. How would you describe your style, Adam? Your type of music?
80s revisited. Has tones of Michael Jackson, The Weeknd, Daft Punk, and synthwave.
And what about you? Well, how would you describe your sound?
Maximalistic, vibrant, and colorful. Very dynamic. I like things that sound futuristic and overly clean, and I don't know if clean is really the right way to describe it, but hyper realistic sounding things.
Oh, very cool. And is that stuff that you learned while you're making it, or you've always had that sound in mind?
It's kind of something I've always tried to gravitate towards. Just how can I keep pushing the boundaries of making something sound more visceral and more real, I guess. Like, how can I continue to increase clarity sonically? And that's just, I think visually too, it's kind of my aesthetic. I do appreciate, that isn't to say I don't, that isn't to say that I can't appreciate and I don't appreciate like things that are more lo-fi. In fact, that's kind of something that I'm trying to introduce as a contrasting element into a lot of my music. But my tendency is to create walls of sound that are full spectrum and very, very intense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good description of that. Especially seeing you live. That's like
true.
It's a very true statement. And then what about you, Adam? Have you always been into that genre, or did that kind of just manifest?
I think actually growing up, I had a distaste for 80s music, actually. And it's kind of funny that I'm doing it now. I think I just heard so much of the commercialized 80s music because it kind of got oversaturated, the music market at that time. It's like everyone was putting out an album. It just got easier, I think. And, it just kind of wasn't appealing to me. I was really into like hip hop and during the time period. But also just want to say it's a trippy moment right now because back in the day when I was in Nashville, I would listen to Austin's music in the gym, specifically the song Atlantis. So that was
really,
yeah. And I would think about trying to,
I didn't know this,
work on like, all right, I'm gonna make it in music, and like listening to like the EDM songs. I think it had a huge influence on my progression to where I am now. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say it's very surreal to be at like this moment here with you.
That's so cool.
And share, have a conversation about music. So
yeah.
Well,
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really cool. I don't really know what to say about that. I mean, it's a fun fact, and I'm glad that was, you know, contributed to some extent to, I don't know, your sonic aesthetic or influenced you in some way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't an electronic artist. I was like more guitarist and vocalist. So, but I loved EDM, like I still do, and I listen to it at the gym all the time.
Yeah.
But now I switched from that world to the electronic world, and so it's cool to hear your perspectives on everything.
Yeah. Well, I love sharing it. I love when I can. First, I want to say, I love talking about things to people when I know that they actually care, or there's something that, like, if you're genuinely curious about something, I want to share that. Like that, that excites me. The prospect of like someone else benefiting or being excited about, or being like enlightened to something that I have, or that I can teach. So,
yeah, and it's so fun because I kind of know you both before I got to know your music. So like I think that's kind of cool too, because it's like it's like different sides of both of you. Like that maybe it's hard for me to, well, it's not hard. It's more like you're creating something that like I didn't really understand or recently got to know until recently. So I like seeing the dynamic of you as an artist and you as you. Like that's kind of a cool way to, I've gotten to know both of you pretty much, not through what you're creating, but like learning and seeing you guys talk about it without like first knowing who you are. You know, most people just know you as AU5, and eventually people are going to know you as Kosmonic, but it's like I kind of feel like I know who you are behind that, you know? So I think that's why this is something I've wanted to talk to both of you about. That I think is so cool because, one, it's like I didn't really like electronic music until I moved here like 2 years ago. I was into like, I mean, I guess I liked electronic music, but not EDM. I was kind of more into the like maybe lesser known artists, or I don't know, for me, I listen to movie scores, and like I like more instrumental music and stuff with more of like I would call it sensual tantric kind of music, like meditative, very like soothing and relaxing music. But there's times where I love thinking of creating stuff like you guys do with like a beat that's dynamic and can like make you move. And like, so when you guys decided to like start making music like that, especially awesome, like, cause your sound pretty much is like pretty consistent, but lately I feel like you're adapting or trying new things, cause you don't sing really, right?
It is a new thing that I've been exploring. I just released an album. That was yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
I'm losing track of time.
We'll find a way to break free from the past we left in time. Don't shy away from the scars that show and the tears that you've cried. I'm wide awake to face the fears and doubts within our minds. Alive today.
What's the album again?
I released this album yesterday, and the last song called "Escape," I'm singing on, which I've sung on probably like 4 or 5 or so songs prior, but this is the song where I actually feel like my voice, I've really like been able to fully use my voice, and I feel pretty good about it. So I think that's something that I'm going to continue to do more. I'm obviously like I'm a perfectionist with a lot of things, and me singing is kind of, you know, you can't be perfect with everything. It's just impossible, and no one expects you to be perfect. And so it's kind of a process of me accepting that, well, I'm never going to be perfect in any one thing, so I may as well just let it be anyway. And there's so much to gain from just doing, regardless of not being ideal, compared to just not doing it at all. And singing is something that I've learned to really like doing. It was something that I loved doing when I was a very, very young child, before I had enough self-awareness to be detrimental to me. And so, yeah, it's really like 25 or so years later, I'm kind of revisiting that lost part of myself. I was also going to say, like, I work with a lot of vocalists who are really good. And so I have this standard in my head of like, I have to be at least this good in order to feel okay doing what I'm doing. But I mean, I think making art that's authentic, like making art that's perfect and authentic are completely different things. And I'm kind of realizing embracing the authenticity and who, like, kind of reinforces who I am becoming, which is, I want to be an honest person. I want to honor truth, whatever that means for me. And I feel more fulfilled when I can just be how I am naturally, and kind of rediscovering what that is. Like, learning or practicing singing is kind of like a part of that process, like getting back in touch with what is true for me, who I am. I feel like I've abandoned so many parts of me defensively over the years. I mean, I think of myself as an introvert. I was not very sociable when I was a kid, and now, I do things like this. I threw myself into an industry where I have to be someone. I have to be sociable. I've done a lot of interviews before, and it's something that I like doing, just not every single day. I need to have that balance, so I can actually kind of get back in touch with myself. I love solitude, and I can just be alone with myself for too long. But I think that contrast allows me to appreciate and come back and do these sort of things with more clarity and authenticity and passion. It's not just something I gotta do. It's not like, all right, every single day I gotta go to work and do this thing. I gotta show up and put on this mask or this persona to be this person. It's like, I don't want to do that.
What about you, Adam?
The passion behind Kosmonic is essentially an experience I had in 2016 that most people will believe me or not on that experience. It's kind of hard to talk about it in public.
Might as well do it now.
But yeah, essentially, passion behind Kosmonic was on St. Patrick's Day in 2016, when I decided to do a ET contact meditation by Dr. Stephen Greer called CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Protocol meditation. And long story short, what you do is you meditate on universal peace and oneness, and just tuning into that everything is one. And then you use a technique called remote viewing. You put your mind, you expand your mind out into the universe and ask if there's any person out there that wants to connect for universal peace and oneness to connect. And you use a remote viewing technique where you imagine yourself at the center of the universe and you encompass all of it. And then you put the call out, and then you sit with that feeling still. And then you use remote viewing to call them back, like anybody, for that purpose only. No other purpose, no other selfish reason. And I did it for 3 nights in a row by myself in my backyard. Both my roommates were gone. And it was a semi-cloudy night. And I think the 3rd night I was like, all right, I'm really going to do this. I really have to let go of my fear of whatever is going to happen. I want to know the answer. First 2 nights, nothing happened. Third night, I do this with real intensity. No looking back. I open my eyes and I see within a couple seconds, a pulsing white sphere of light that grew physically in size. Like, there's nothing that I've ever seen that's looked like that anywhere on TV shows or anything. Just imagine a white sphere pulsing like this, and then it went out, and then it was over here, and it just did the same thing. And it did it so like, it just did it gradually like this. And then it was over here. And then it was over here. And it just kept doing, did it like 8 times. And I started crying because I was like, I can't believe we're not alone. That they came here for one human being and they came for universal peace and oneness. That's how I got onto the path of Kosmonic. And to make sure that I wasn't hallucinating, I did it again. I called my parents, I called friends. I was like, you won't believe what just happened. Did it with my parents and a friend, and the same thing happened 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, pulsing orb came over. My friend was the first one to see it. And where you sitting are right now, he pointed over my dad's shoulder and he said, I think I see it. And then as my dad turns around, it grows in size, like tremendously, like up in the sky. I don't know how far, like, you know, like a helicopter distance away. I don't know how high helicopters can fly, but that's the best I can think of distance wise. And my dad turned around and saw it and he said, oh my God. And it just solidified it 100% that what I experienced was like real. And not only that, you can do it with your friends and family. And, you know, I wanted to become a missionary at that point because I just couldn't believe that we don't know this, like that the population of planet Earth doesn't know that we're not alone. And for a reason, an intention, a meditative intention of universal peace and oneness. What solidified it even more was after we had that experience and we're all blown away, we packed up and this black helicopter flew over us with the searchlight. And Greer talks about that they monitor these things and they know where they are and they probably picked up something on radar and they were checking it out and that we were just the ones. They were too late.
So then that whole experience inspired you to create Kosmonic, or that was something that didn't exist until then?
I wanted to raise people's awareness that we're not alone and that we don't have to be afraid of the unknown, and that if you put your intention out there of such a beautiful concept of universal oneness, if you just really think about what that means, universal oneness is basically everything that emanates all existence, and it's coherence, it's order, it's the planetary motion, it's the motion of, you know, the planets moving in its orbit. It's all these things that we take for granted as like, oh, that's the way it is, and that's not God, you know, like that's. So it was just a bigger implication of not just we're not alone. It was a spiritual awakening of, oh my God, like oneness is real. We are all connected. We're all one. And that's the message I want to convey in Kosmonic at the end of the day, through this, you know, more interesting musical concept that I think tells a story about each thing that we consider supernatural or, you know, paranormal. And you know, I can't really write a song about that experience. Like I've tried, but it didn't sound good to me. So haven't made it yet. But I listen to a lot of meditation music and I get into that state still, and it still is with me so strongly. And I could talk for, you know, hours about this stuff because I've talked to other people that have had interesting experiences that didn't see an ET or something, but like they had a presence with them or something. And it was like a friend of mine, and I told him my experience and he had something similar. And I just feel like it's all finally like, okay, to finally talk about these things and get people engaged to discuss these things and learn more, because it's profound once you have this experience. It's like a near-death experience. It's like a psychedelic experience. They're all very similar.
Yeah, and there's millions of people who have had it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming definitely more common. And I just think it's interesting because you talk about universal peace and oneness, but I think music is that.
Yeah.
You know, like it universally brings people together, have the same experience, and it's like all connected to music, you know? So it's very, you know, it's a great, you know, way to express what you're trying to do with music. It makes so much sense. And I would say, like, Austin, have you ever had anything supernatural to help inspire the music you write, or like, where does that come from?
Yes. Well, not too far of a departure from this incredible experience that you had. When I was probably like 3 or 4 years old, I remember I've always been fascinated by space, outer space, the sky, stars, stuff like that. This was probably on the cusp of when I've been able to actually, like, this is one of my earliest memories. Looking out the window at night and seeing what looked like a diamond shaped craft with lights lining the center. And it wasn't something that I've ever seen before. And I don't think that I was exposed to any media that really depicted anything like it. And I remember drawing it. I remember drawing it a lot afterwards. I told my parents about it, and I guess I told my friends and whatnot about it. But it was, for me, it was something that was, how do I put it? It was profound, but not in like a, oh my God, I can't believe this is real, because I think I was just too young to really understand that, like, the contrast of like how radical this is. I was just intrigued by it. I think I was 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
This was like in the house that I grew up in. And then I moved houses when I was 5. So it was definitely before I was 5 years old. And, I think that was kind of the inception of my fascination of like the unknown and aliens and stuff like that. Cause that was something I became fascinated in afterwards. And when I was like 12, I think, once I had access to the internet, was so interested in researching, like ET encounters or UFO sightings. I made just collections. I found like as much footage as possible, video and photos, and would make like folders and collections of these things and try to, there really wasn't any resources at the time. We're talking like 2005 or so, when the internet was just not so full. And I was just trying to make sense of like, what is this? Because I think around that age, you start to become more aware of, like, you start to become self-aware as like a separate entity from your parents and what that means in society. And I think for me, I wanted to spread awareness of like, there is stuff that is happening that is important, that like important to me, that like, why isn't anyone talking about this? Kind of the same thing. Like, why, like, how is this just something so easily just brushed under the rug or like steamrolled? You know what I mean? And it's incredible. I guess, yeah, like 20 years later. Damn. Okay. Yeah. 20 years later, that we're kind of collectively way more open to this, and it's an okay thing to talk about.
For sure.
Without just being like dismissed as you're crazy and you can't have any valid opinions or about anything. Yeah. I don't have, like, my career is not threatened by saying I believe in aliens.
Right.
It's weird when society tells you they don't exist, and then on your own you find out that it does, and that makes you upset. It makes you mad, like, because it's a lie. It's a lie that, you know, that there's, you know, that, you know, there is life after death. Like, and it's like taught in all these traditions and stuff, but like, it's not until you have a near-death experience and you start listening to all of them collectively, you take the time to do it, you'll start to see it's pretty clear. But it's just upsetting that society doesn't accept that for some reason. It doesn't. Scientific community is like, no.
Yeah.
It's just really, something's off. Like,
It's called denial. They don't want to
Something's
grasp
off.
anything greater or beyond themselves, pretty much. You know, that's why I think if they don't understand it, they're going to fear it. So it's easier to
Yeah.
deny than like listen or accept.
I think it's like a collective defense mechanism. It's easier to say it's easier to say this doesn't exist or that it's fake because it is something that's unknown. It is something that
yeah, it gets tangled in the fake. It gets tangled in people lying about story and, you know, telling fibs and stuff.
right.
Yeah, it's like,
it's littered with disinformation as well, which makes it really hard to discern. Well, what is real and what is fake? And it's easier to just say this is all fake
All right.
and have a bubble of your reality that you understand and are familiar with, because it makes it easier. It's more comfortable. It makes it easier to function in society when we all collectively agree that here's the world that we live in and we understand everything that's inside of it. I think that's what science tries to do. But I also think that science has its own shortcomings. I think science often can be used as this, I think science can be dogmatic and can be used as this tool of ignorance sometimes.
Well, especially if they're closed-minded, they're only going to try to prove what they already believe besides stuff that they don't believe.
Right. And true
then,
science
you know.
is about inquisition, about the unknown, and reinventing models that better support what reality is. But if we're not open to reality being something else, I mean, we're basically reinforcing a limited view of reality. And there isn't room for science. There isn't enough room for true science to remodel, like create new models and theories.
Yeah. That's why I think art is so important and powerful, because if you're so intellectual in your head, you can never really understand how to create anything. You just want to like critique it or, you know, analyze it or like not even understand it. But then once you become, I always say like, for me, being creative is like the balance of the two hemispheres of your brain, like left to right. Because there's a lot of scientists who are just left brain. There's like, you know, they just want data and facts, numbers, or things that they can prove, while the right brain is much more intuitive and open and not in your head, like much more into creating, you know, while left brain is much more into like, you know, being inside and not going out of your comfort zone. So I always think that like, if a scientist can understand music, which every scientist should be able to because they listen to it, it's like, how can you deny something like seeing a craft? Because where does music come from?
sound can levitate objects.
Exactly. It's like how could they deny something else than that? So to me, it's like, it's just denial because they can't prove it and they don't want to look like they're crazy. You know, it's
because
more
that's
like
become
fear.
their identity.
Yeah. That, you know, whatever their life is based upon is something that they can prove. But it's like, I would say like, that's why I always think musicians are scientists that don't need to prove anything because they're just making things, you know, which is like the balance of your hemispheres. But I also think that like for me, whenever I've been creative, like the only experience I've had that's very similar, that's me and my best friends who were, you know, I do photography. So we were doing like experimental lighting and kind of like doing shoots just in the moment. And so we did that for maybe an hour or two, just kind of like creating whatever we thought would be interesting and changing up every now and then just for fun. And then when we finished, we went outside to have a smoke and relax. And all of a sudden we're talking, we hear a dog barks. We all three just turn to where that sound is coming from. And we see a blue orb just fly up in the air. And literally I looked at my friends. I was like, did you fucking see that? Like, was that just me? And they're like shocked. They're just like they had nothing to say. It was just so shocking. But for me, I was just like, we just saw that. Like, you know, it was amazing. And the thing that's so interesting is that I feel like whenever I'm in that creative state, something like that happens to me because I'm not thinking. I'm just so present. And then we were so present, we heard a sound and it just happened. And the three of us like had that shared experience because I think we're in that state. And I don't really need to, like, I think that experience was for us and not something I need to like prove or, because I always think like anything that's supernatural happens is for you. Like there's no need to really get attention from it because I think it's happening for you for a specific reason to ignite something that you're like needing or wanting, you know?
For anyone listening, if you want to know the answer, you can find the answer. You just have to ask and do a little work.
You just have to be open to it.
Really?
Believe it.
You have to just do the work, but most people just don't want to, and they don't care and they don't want to. And that's why I think we're at the state that we're in.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that like I always, for perspective for me, no matter what's happening inside or what they tell you to believe or not believe, it's like Native Americans have been in contact for like centuries, like almost like and there's no need for them to ever prove it because it's a personal thing, you know, it's such a thing that, you know, they don't need to prove. So I always say that like, if anyone out there who's had that experience, like know that you don't need to prove or say it to prove it because I think to only prove it is to like live that kind of life, like you're saying, you know, like peace and harmony. Because if you're not living that peace and harmony,
the Space Brothers,
you know,
I mean, that's very in alignment with the CE5.
Yeah.
Protocol. It's like this peaceful thing. They're my brothers, you know? Like,
right. And so that's why I think that there's such a funny, I wouldn't say like parallel to music with, I think the supernatural things, because like your ideas come from something, you know, but you can't really prove it.
Yeah. Like music, I was talking to Austin earlier. Music for me is so different from when I used to write it. It comes more naturally with this project that I'm doing now, because I'm making something, I'm writing, I'm producing, making, like starting out with synth sounds and stuff like that. And then I just kind of hear, okay, where's this taking me? What is the path? And then when I come to the lyrics and have like a foundation, what is this song like? What is it speaking? What does it sound like? What are the words that come to mind? And like really sitting back and listening. And I said to Austin, I was like, I have this, you know, these lyrics, your touch. And I'm like, I would never write your touch, but it just came out because it felt right. It sounds right. I replaced it with other words. I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about your touch. It just like kind of seems a little interesting.
Right,
but
you're like analyzing it.
Yeah.
What it means as like the implication of it outside of the music. But like in the song, I find that it can, like the song itself and the way that it is expressed musically, like that lyric expressed musically, is so strong. It recontextualizes my, you know, what I usually think of as what your touch would mean. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's imbued with this new energy and this power.
Yeah, and it's I don't like understand it myself. I feel like I just kind of feel like whatever is right, or like what sonically makes sense,
Like intuitively.
Yeah, and maybe not like, let's stop analyzing it and just like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I have to let that be what it is, and nothing can beat it.
Totally.
Nothing compares to what that first lyric was.
Totally.
It's really strange. And it's cool. And it's fun. And it's freeing. It's freeing because you just kind of trust in, okay, what just feels good, what feels right. And that's why, what's his name? Rick Rubin, right? He's the producer. Just, that's what he does.
Right.
He just sits there and he just is like, this feels good. Yeah, it's done.
Doesn't overthink it. Yeah. Overthinking ruins all art, you know?
Yeah.
Or it turns something beautiful into something like it's not anymore.